I'm just going to talk very quickly about the digital classicist community, which is why there's not even a title slide on this little extract of slides on here. So, those of you who aren't familiar with it, the digital classicist is a community with a set of resources that help to get that community engaged with one another and communicating and so forth. And I'm just going to quickly walk through a couple of the resources that the digital classicist community use, and then give a very brief example, just tell a story about how this community has helped to develop a massive collaboration that I'm involved in. And afterwards, just by way of setting the scene for what the digital classicist is and does and can achieve in terms of engagement and knowledge exchange and so forth. So the first of these activities is, as Leif just mentioned, the seminars that we run. The seminars run every Friday during the summer months, and the first of this year's seminars is going to be this afternoon at 4:30 in room 103 in this building. Everyone here more than welcome to join us for that. The London seminar program has been running for about 8 years now. Officially, 2 years before that, unofficially, we snuck into unlocked rooms and had presentations with the lights out. I'm only slightly exaggerating. In the last couple of years, we've been joined or emulated, depending on which way you want to look at it, by a seminar series in Berlin, the Digital Classicist Berlin seminar series, which also runs now every year, although normally over the fall and spring, and by a third series in Leipzig, which calls itself E-Humanities, but is modelled in many ways on the same sorts of work and engages with a lot of the same community as the London Digital Classicist seminar, which normally runs across the end of the year, the autumn term, the year again. And the other parts of the digital classicist community, the core of it in many ways is the mailing list. This discussion group, which has probably about, I forget the number, but 300 or 400 people, I imagine, on this list. It's a relatively low traffic list. It mostly involves announcements, but occasionally there is some discussion of questions relating to technology and classics and archaeology and so forth, which get discussed there. And the third element of the community is this website, which is run on a wiki platform. So it's wiki.digitalclassicist.org, but it's more really than just a wiki. It's a whole body of information, not only about the community itself, but about other resources that may be of interest to digital classicists and archaeologists and so forth. And here is just an example. This is the category page for projects. We see there's 179 pages in there currently. There are other category pages for tools, for frequently asked questions. There's a list of members, and there's various other pages in there. And so this is very useful in terms of collecting information in one place that people can work with. I think this works in the way that many of these sorts of community wikis don't necessarily work, because it's actually a very small and very coherent community. Lots of other attempts to build communities across all of digital humanities, for example, have been a lot less sustained over time than the digital classicist has. So just quickly to tell the story of this one collaboration I've been involved with, and this really is a story of how the communities and the community resources bring people together. I usually preface telling this story by saying that at any conference or any seminar, the least interesting thing that happens is someone stands up at the front talking. Right? The next least interesting is people in the room have a discussion and ask that person questions. The most interesting thing, the most valuable thing, the single most fruitful thing is that they go to the pub afterwards. That's where communication happens. That's where new collaborations begin. And this story doesn't quite begin in the pub. This story begins at lunch in my department in Digital Humanities at King's. This is just a small group of people at lunch one day, and this particular project started when my colleague Faith Lawrence, sat at the back there, was asking randomly at lunchtime, because of this project SAWS that she works on, She was asking, what do we do if we have a project that we have many place references in this project, to which Pelagios exists, and the Pleiades project exists, so we know how to deal with places. And what do we do if we want to link to people? And so we started thinking about, well, there is no single prosopography of people in the ancient world. And so we started thinking, we asked the question on the digital classes list, what prosopographies exist out there in digital form that we could bring together, and this led to some discussion that caused us to create a page on the wiki that, this is the first half or so of that page, listing those digital or online prosopographies that we could think of. And people started adding to this list also things that are not necessarily online, or at least not in the sense we normally think of as digital. They're not yet OCR'd PDFs in Google Books or whatever, but things that could, in theory, be brought online. And so we started thinking about what would it take to bring these things together into a single Pleiades-like unit, corpus of ancient people, or an authority of ancient people. The next phase of this conversation happened at the Linked Ancient World Data Institute, LAUDI, which run by the New York University, and ran 2 workshops in 2012 and 2013. And we had a fair bit of discussion about what it would take to bring all these prosopographies together in linked data at that workshop. And this led to the following people, some of whom are in this room, setting up a new project and a collaboration based on that. And this project was 6 months ago or so, received funding and is now midway through, and you can find a lot of information about that project there. This presentation, I don't want to talk about that project, but the fact that very successful and very exciting project is the result almost entirely of communications that were enabled by the fact that the digital classes community exists. Partly because the resources exist, and partly because the people involved are interested in this. And most of the conversations, I think it's true to say, Leif, most of the conversations about setting up the Snapdragon project and how we were going to do this did take place in the pub.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
So that's just by way of background. I'll hand over to Simon.
Thank you. Do you want to bring the slides up? Because I have memory failure. I need to remind myself what I'm supposed to be talking about. But before I start, I want to thoroughly underpin what Gabriel said about the unofficial means for communication and the trips down the pub and things like that. And you've got notes on yours. That's cool. I don't have it on mine. And you mentioned the other 2 seminars, the ones at Leipzig and the ones at Berlin, and it was made very, very clear to me that they were modelled on the digital class one specifically for that reason, because they allowed for the more relaxed atmosphere and the sort of the spirit of collaboration with the drinks afterwards, and of course down the pub. I'm supposed to be talking about pedagogy because it's my job. I work down at UCL. I'm in the Centre for Digital Humanities there. I'm director program, the master's degree program, and some other sorts of stuff. I'm confused. I can now see too much on my screen down there. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about open education resources and digital humanities and how that affects the community for DigiClass here. This is a project that I was working on a few years ago down here. This is Open Education Resources for Classics. With open educational resources, if it's something you're not familiar with, there's nothing new about this. And we can trace this back to UNESCO conference in 2000, so it's something that's been around for a long time. And I guess the big players came into the field the following year, 2001, with MIT opening making its open courseware available online. But just to use the UNESCO definition there, open education resources are teaching, learning or research materials in a public domain, importantly, and released, importantly also as intellectual property license that allows, and these are deliberately involved, adaptation, distribution and free use as well. These are the 3 projects in there. Somewhere in my slides it's supposed to say, to remind you that the E in UNESCO actually stands for education. I can never get my acronyms. United Nations Educational Science and something organisation as well, isn't it? But education is part of UNESCO, what they're about. These are 3 projects that we had on the go at UCL, and I just want to very, very briefly mention those. The first one is mine, which was Digital Humanities Open Education Resources, which is really me reacting against the fact that all my teaching materials are locked away in a VLE and that you need a password to actually access them. So this is processing all my teaching materials, making sure there's no copyright restriction on it, making sure it's free to put out there in the community, and putting it all up online on an online repository. This one here, interesting one, I'm not going to talk about that, but that's continual professional development for higher education. This one down here is my colleague's one in ancient Dutch, and the relevance for that and the digital classicist community is because this became very useful for extending language, and the teaching of language. Modern languages, as we all know, are very, very much at risk. Yeah. This is Uli's one on there. This is the continuum development one. Okay, what have we got? We've got the creation of the open education resources, taking your teaching material and putting up there online a range of teaching materials relevant to my area, and making these available. And then you've got the additional problems of, okay, are you going to put a whole course up there, like you do with the MIT, the Coursera ones, or is it something that I actually would want to use in the classroom? Individual objects, things that I can use in a classroom-based context, right? That's what I'm interested in, and that's actually what I was doing. So I don't want to talk about the large ones. And you have issues of granularity, and we had an executive decision to actually bring it right the way down to the individual learning object, if you like, level, but then also package these up and make them available online. Very, very importantly, in a format that allows people to actually take them and use it, not being locked down in proprietary formats, but using open document formats throughout, making it all available in that way. And this all feeds into the growth of knowledge and becomes an iterative cycle, hopefully, where you put the material up there and people do take it, reuse it, and hopefully improve it and put it back up to the system. The connection with digital classicists, and my background as a classicist as well, I was really interested in the differences between my disciplines and also what was available for classics. And we've got two major repositories in the UK for open education resources. One is Durham and one is Humbox. And when you look for classic stuff, oh my gosh, there's nothing there. Hardly. In Durham you'll find things that include the word classics in there. History is the nearest we can get to it. If you do go down far enough, you can pick up some regional growth from neoclassical perspective. A few little words in there. You get a little bit more success if you go to Humbox, interestingly. If you search for classics in there, you get nothing on classics, but look, there's one by Brett Lucas there. How that's got in there, I do not know. Right? These are allegedly tagged up in sort of some way and processed by their algorithms, but it seems to be searching within the content. Another interesting one, if you do scroll further and further down, you do eventually come to some images of classical scenes that were painted, and this was by Matt Philpott, who used to work downstairs. And this was for an early Durham funded project for open education resources in 2009. If you put in classical studies, you'll see that I come up at the very top. Yeah? No, this is more surprising than that, because this actually, you can't see this, but this is one of Gabriel's presentations to my students on open source and open access. And nowhere in the tagging has it got classics or classical studies. And I went through the text. Nowhere in the text does it say classics or classical studies. So I have no idea how that's come up on the top of the list there. And there's another one from Brett, who's learning technologist at Queen Mary, University of London. But this dates from when he was working in the English Language Centre, so English Language Subject Centre. So how that's got there, I do not know. So to rectify this, I started putting up a community page on our wiki to gather together some resources for teaching. As a community project, of course, I address the classics community as well as the digital classicist community, using just mailing lists, other lists through classicists, the OER discussion lists, and various parts of various strands of social media. The responses were limited, but one thing I did get, thank you again James for this, is I got the stuff from OpenLearn. But again, there are courses you can sign up for, and I've seen promotion for a new master's program in classical studies. But again, these are at a program level, although there are some that are much smaller, and they're like a couple of hours, so clearly that's not a program. They very, very helpfully include some of the metadata actually in their duration, 20 hours, duration 10 hours, well that clearly is a series of lectures, it's not a course or a program. Whereas that one over there, 600 hours, clearly is a whole program. But again, James pointed me to material that they have actually in the classics department that's available, and the sorts of things that actually I would be interested in. And this is released under a Creative Commons license. Is a material to help with the teaching of Latin and such like, and that just opens up into more. There are other platforms out there. Again, you will find the occasional little bit on classics, but not very much at all. There is an OER search engine, Expert, which will pull up some things. That's Pat Lockery, who works on the MOOCs here. This is his one from when he was at Nottingham. But that's not 100% because it doesn't bring my stuff up. I don't know why. I need to ask him, why can't my stuff come up? Under the tags, yeah, if you put in the DHOER, it doesn't come up. But what it does do is it brings up some of the stuff from Oxford. You've got Oliver Taplin on classics, and the videos that they did, again under a GISC, the podcasts and some of the videos as well, that they did under the GISC OER strand, the first strand on there. So there, and some of this stuff on tragedy and stuff on classics is available up there. But going back to the community, more blatant promotion, and this is our latest publication. Thank you to a couple of the contributors in this room. But you'll see on this right-hand menu, this is the STOAS consortium that we joined with when we were setting up the digital classicist. Rather than having our own separate blog, we melded in with the STOA, and we use that one now. And in that right-hand menu, there are a great deal of resources actually in there. There's a slide. No? Okay. I just need to give a nod to all the material that you can find on there. There's lots of other stuff, obviously the stuff that goes on at TUS with the Classics and the classics community that we're familiar with. I'm not sure if this is a discoverability issue. If you're going to have teaching resources and you're going to have material up there. Thank you.
Oh yeah, one more.
Okay. If you're going to have material and you're going to put it out there, as well as what is the context, is this openly available? Is it in a format that I can actually use, open document format? But it's got to be found. I'm not sure whether there's material out there for classics, as I'm still working on this, but it's lacking in the discoverability element to it. This is one of the things that we found in ours is so important. It's so important for the consistency of the metadata and the appropriate nature of the metadata, as well as having open licenses and having it in an open format, absolutely, absolutely essential. And this is just the final one on here. And this is where I mentioned the word pedagogy. I knew it was in one of the slides, so it's the final slide on there. Thanks for reminding me. But sometimes when I go to discussions and workshops on open education resources, one of the things that we often talk about is, okay, we do this stuff, we put it out there, even if actually nobody does use it. It serves a very, very useful purpose because it engages us in reflection on our teaching practice. As a teacher, as a teaching fellow, it's something that's part of my job and I'm supposed to be doing. So this gives me another way to do that. It gives me another way to do research on teaching and teaching practice, to go to conferences and talk about this, and to fortunately get actually publications on this as well. So it works, and it underpins the three sort of areas of my activity. But also, very, very importantly, it gives us opportunity to think and reflect on our students. Very, very primarily, what skills do our students need? What is the best way to attain them? And I'm as mystified as all the rest of us. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.